see the screen okay?
I can, yeah, and
Good.
can see you when you're talking, which is great.
Good. Yeah, so that's the slide we're on now. And if any of you need a prompt or I need to ask a question, just go ahead. We'll give us 5 minutes. So how are you all getting on? Do you need a little bit longer or do you want to start sharing some of your thoughts on this?
I'm okay to start sharing.
Yep. Would you like to share some of your thoughts about your own audience?
Yeah, I guess we've got a kind of head start on probably where most people are, because we have 2 established CSAs in Stroud already, Stroud Community Agriculture, who do veg, and Stroud Micro Dairy, who do milk and yogurt and that kind of stuff. And we're looking to do fruit primarily. So I think our first call is like all of the members of the other CSAs. A really good start.
That's good thinking. As a matter of interest, what sort of people are they?
Well, yeah, that's a good question. I have the feeling that quite a lot of them are families, but there are also older people and some younger people. I guess there are people who are interested in local food and organic food, and from the dairy, also interested in raw milk, which is kind of unusual. Maybe there are people who are interested in healthy food, and potentially people who are interested in like the community aspect of the CSA.
Yeah, I think that's some really good points. I mean, how do other people chime in on that? I mean, does that chime with some of you? Those sort of words like local food, organic, healthy, community.
Yeah, I mean, I wrote people who want to improve their health, people who like cooking, people
yeah,
who want possibly to grow their own, people interested in food sovereignty, taking control of their own food. But we've been established for some time, and ran a veg box scheme previously, and already have a mailing list set up of about 600 people.
Wow.
So we would tap into our existing resources in terms of finding people in the first instance.
I mean, both of, well, you in particular, when you set out though, did you make any mistakes and target people who might not be interested and waste a bit of time?
Yes, we did do leafleting, just like you mentioned right at the beginning.
Blanket.
And had very low uptake from that.
Yeah, that's interesting. Is Adam still with us?
Yep, I'm still here.
Oh, hi there, Adam. Have you got anything to add to this? Sorry,
yeah, I've got written down a lot of things that have just been said. I think the community-minded kind of thing is quite a big part of what we want to do. The thing is as well, we want to appeal to sort of everyone, try and sort of get people that maybe wouldn't have thought of it before. And I'm not sure quite how we do that, especially in Exmoor, where sort of very much kind of want people who care about the planet, care about local food, that sort of thing. But we also want to get people that maybe didn't originally care so much about those things. And that's sort of one of the big questions for me. How are we going to do that?
Can I suggest that, yes, that's a good idea, but B, that you don't do that straight away?
Yeah.
Go for the obvious.
Yeah, definitely.
Kate, have you got something to add to this? Kate?
I think, if I remember, I think Kate's the one that's going to struggle for the first 10, 15 minutes.
Sure
and someone will join.
Exactly, that's
yeah.
fine. So just quickly before we move on, I mean, where do you think these people hang out? How are you going? When I say how are you going to reach them, I don't mean whether you're going to reach them via a leaflet or whatever, but where do you think you'll find all these people? These people aren't necessarily individuals, are they? They gather a bit. So what sort of organizations could you perhaps plug into where these sorts of people gather together?
We work closely with quite a lot of schools in Hereford. And so, and also we work with social services and other organisations which refer people to us for our recipe boxes. So, so we certainly will be looking and hoping that parents from the schools will take part in this, especially the families which are close to where our new community garden is being built, which is on the southern side of Hereford, and is an area of deprivation. So we're hoping that we will actually cater more lower income families than we did previously with our old box scheme.
That's interesting. That's interesting. Any other ideas? I mean, obviously
the kind of like likely suspects are like in the transition movement and the Extinction Rebellion movement.
Yeah.
And we've got a couple of kind of organic whole food type cafes in Stroud that have notice boards, and you know, the kind of people who go there are the obvious ones. But like you, Adam, I also feel like it's really important to I don't just want to have the usual suspects. And it sounds like you're doing something quite different, Pat, with engaging people who are in deprived areas and maybe on lower incomes, or perhaps there's also, you know, like people who have health problems, and or people from ethnic minorities, or kind of all the not so obvious suspects.
The thing is about what we're doing is we have to make money.
Well, that's what I was actually about to say myself. Yeah. I think what one always has to have at the back of one's mind is that we have to be a business, and we have to be able to tick over, and even if we're not profit making, we have to make money in order to survive. And there's this very tricky balance between finding people who will pay up on a regular basis and finding people who need us. And yes, I mean, that is something which the CSA network is constantly trying to look into and trying to resolve. It's a bit of a paradox, that one. But yes, that's a very important point to make. But I think it's very much a question of always thinking about, you know, when you're talking about engaging members, you've got to think who might be interested, what sort of people are they, and also where they hang out, whether it's, you know, within certain community organizations, or whether it's in clubs, societies, sports clubs, that sort of thing, where you'll find healthy people who want to eat healthily. Well, thanks for that. You're definitely on the mark here, and I'm going to pass over to Alex now to talk about targeting your audience and get you to do some more work.
Excellent. So yeah, thanks. A really great start. And what I'll just chime in is that my point on understanding your target audience and identifying your target audience as my sort of opinion on that is, if there's one key thing to take away today, then that everything else will stem from, it will be identifying that target audience. This is a reason it's first on the board. It's the reason Charlotte's introduced that, you know, that element to it, because everything else that we talk about today will be specific to your target audience. And there's some really, really good points that you've come out of that with. So it's a fantastic start. So as Charlotte said, we're going to talk about tools and methods that will draw attention to your CSA and therefore create members. And effectively, we're talking about publicity. For want of a better phrase, we're going to talk about publicity. So who is in your target audience will determine what tools or methods you use to attract their attention. So I'd like you to go away and think about some of the tools that you are either using already, that you'd like to know more about, or that you thought about using but you've never really got around to doing it. So think about the tools that you're using and that are out there to attract, in this instance, new members and publicity towards your CSA. We'll do the same as before. We'll give you 5 minutes to have a think about it. We'll come back and have a bit of a share, and I'll talk about it a little bit too. So yeah, what tools are you going to use to publicise your CSAs? Then have a think about what you'd use first and what resources you need to do that. And we'll come back and have a chat in 5 minutes. Thank you. If you want any clarification on anything while you're compiling your list, just give us a shout. Okay, just a couple more minutes. We'll start sharing. Okay, is anyone desperate for more time, or are we ready to share? Okay. Anyone want to go first and share what they've got on their list for the tools you're going to use to publicise your CSA?
I can, if you like.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you, Adam.
Okay, so I've got sort of a list of things we're doing already, and then a few things that we maybe could do. But things we're already doing is we've got a Facebook page, an Instagram page, a website very nearly ready. We've been to one local event so far, had a stall with flyers. We're sending out newsletters to people who've shown an interest at any point during the process. We've had an event, an article in the local paper when we got our funding through. And we are doing very limited amount of trial boxes this season, even though we're barely really in a position to do it. We just thought it's a good way of getting some projects out there. People can see what we can do, and hopefully we'll start talking to other people about it ready for next year. And then things we are hoping to do soon would be sort of like an open day or other sort of event where we can invite people to come and see what we're up to.
Yeah.
And also sort of try and join in with the publicity that Horner Farm, who we're leasing the land from, that have very similar principles to us, except they do livestock, whereas we'll do veg. Try and sort of team up with them on some of their events and publicity. That's what I got so far.
Awesome.
Sounds
Yeah,
good.
cracking start. Yeah, really good. Anyone, before we sort of start picking into the individuals, does anyone else want to add anything that's they feel they missed or they're doing different?
Yeah, I mean, we're doing much the same, Adam, as you, but the other things I've got down are things like community centres, because we'll be working with community centres. So we'll definitely be publicising through them, and also other networks like the Green Network, the Voluntary Support Network, the Talk Community. Yeah.
As a matter of interest, when you say you're working with community centres, Green Network and Voluntary Support Network, how are you doing that though?
Well,
is that verbal or face to face?
No, we work closely with one centre in particular because we run our cookery workshops there, and also we've helped them provide meals for elderly folk in the community during COVID. We've had to change everything we've done during COVID, and also we've lost our education garden. So we're in the process of gaining asset transfer on 16 acres just outside of Hereford, and we will replicate our education garden, but also we will continue to work with the local community as we are doing now. So and with the Green Network, obviously they have their own newsletter and know what they're doing, know what we're doing. And also we're part of the Food Alliance in Hereford. So we attend their meetings, one of which is later on today. And we will publicise what we're doing through them. So we're widely networking.
Networking.
Yeah.
Good word.
Yeah.
And you mentioned newsletter. I think that's quite significant. If you're in a rural area, there are a lot of community newsletters, parish even, magazines still exist in some quite deep rural areas.
Well, we'll certainly be accessing other people's newsletters, and we produce our own monthly newsletter as well, which goes out to about 600 people.
I think you're absolutely right, and I think again we're going to sound like a broken record. Or I'm certainly going to sound like a broken record. It absolutely links back to that first part around demographic, the difference between where I am and where Charlotte is, for example. And our demographic could be completely different. Newsletters and stuff wouldn't necessarily. Local community newsletters and magazines are almost non-existent where I am, but A lot of that's gone online, and being a sort of London overspill area, a lot of that's gone online. A lot of it's a lot more fast paced. So it's, again, it links, the first point, it just links back to that demographic and understanding where you are. But yeah, again, a few great add-ons. Any more to add from the final group before I talk a little bit about some of them?
We've been because we're doing fruit, and it, like, there's a long lead time on fruit. So we've been doing some little volunteer work parties already, kind of way before the point where we have any produce, but that we're sort of starting to make a sense of people connected to the land and knowing what we're doing, just in a really informal way. And we also put up a sign in the field, because our plantings are right on a public footpath, and there's dozens of people walk past there every day. And so just that they stop and can read the sign and know what we're doing, I think it's sort of like laying some groundwork for the future.
You've made a very interesting point there, because in fact Camel CSA, us in Cornwall, we're on where 3 footpaths meet, and we have an enormous banner. It cost us less than £100, one of those banners on our fence that says who we are, and we often get people hanging over the gate and waving at us and wanting us to go and chat and explain what we're doing. But actually none of you have used a phrase which I always use in these circumstances, which is word of mouth. That is actually the first, it's starting with friends and family, it's word of mouth. Now, we have a form on our website, we'll come on to this later, but we have a form on our website where people sign up to join our waiting list, because we have a waiting list now. And at the end it says, how did you hear about us? And the majority of people have either heard about us via word of mouth or Facebook, but word of mouth comes first. And I think you should never, ever, ever underestimate just chatting to people at bus stops or in queues.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the exact point that I was going to come on to from a marketing background, my marketing background. Delivering consistency and a great product is obviously 1 and 2. Once you're up and running, if you've got that consistency in a great product, the product will sell itself. You know, I think we can all agree that we've got a product and within a CSA model, a product that is sellable and marketable. And the next biggest thing is word of mouth, or the things that come under that word of mouth. And the way I think about it is, what's the best way to tell story, to sell the story that you're trying to create? You're trying to create this story, and I've listened to, I don't know any of you personally, but listen to what you've said so far about the reasons people join CSAs, whether it's to do with owning their own, food that goes into their body, whether it's environmental impacts and stuff like that. And the best way to tell your story, certainly for me, is word of mouth, is face to face, is to talk to people and bring across that passion. So under the sort of umbrella of word of mouth, there's some bits that you've alluded to, which is like open mornings. I think someone mentioned towards the beginning, which is great because you can get people there face to face. Think about other outlets to get in front of people. You've talked about clubs and social events. I do a couple of farmers markets a month as well, which is where I get a lot of face-to-face contact with people that are naturally interested in fresh or organic fruit and vegetables, because they're approaching my stall. So naturally your demographic comes to you. I know that's a big commitment, but certainly a lot of my CSA members have come, or VegBox members, I should say, have come via sort of a taster at the farmers market. Taster boxes are great. And then the last thing on word of mouth from me is just think about other people to tell your story for you. We've talked about, when we were talking about demographics, you talked about, there's those obvious groups of people, environmental people that, like we said, people that are environmental, those maybe vegans and vegetarians, people that want to, those obvious demographics, but they will also sign them up and give them a great experience. They will become your cheerleaders in how you reach that wider audience that you're talking about, that you want to attract. So yes, some fantastic stuff out there: flyers, posters, newsletters work in with demographics, social media, which we do a bit on a little bit later, a website, a work functional website just makes it really, really easy for people to come back, find the information once you've had that initial conversation, whether that's face-to-face or online. Then you've got mainstream media, open days and events that we've touched on. So yeah, I think you covered most of them. The emphasis on word of mouth is really important. That's certainly how I sell my story.
Can I just suggest one thing when it comes to mainstream media? Because one of you mentioned getting an article in the local paper. I think it was Adam, was it?
Yeah.
Don't forget about local radio, in particular BBC local radio, because they're talk radio largely, although they're talking less and less now. The cuts have hit them pretty hard. But the other day at Camel CSA, we were approached by a guy who's got a Sunday show on BBC Radio Cornwall, and he gave us something like 12 minutes. He came and pre-recorded some stuff, but local radio gets to a certain audience. Now with BBC local radio, it's people over the age of 45, but we do have a significant number of members who are in that age group. Who don't necessarily have children at home. So it was great to get on BBC local radio. And if you're somewhere like Exmoor, you've got Somerset, and if you're somewhere like Hereford, you've got Hereford local radio, and so on. And even Essex, Alex, it's got a BBC local radio.
Yeah, I've been on. So, yeah, you're absolutely right. Yeah, we've still got local radio, and yeah, I've exactly the same podcast and stuff like that from a local, locally produced podcasts and radio. We've tried all them avenues. I think one thing when you're talking about marketing as a wider sort of thing, there's no right or wrong answers. I think, certain, like we've said 15 times already, certain things will work better than others for certain areas, but I don't think you can go wrong with any of them per se, as long as you use them in the right way. But trying all of these and a combination of all of these things that we've talked about is obviously the best way to go about it.
What about resources though? Because obviously resources come into this, and we're thinking about money, we're thinking about equipment, we're thinking about time, which is a resource we all, really suffer with a lack of, and skills, of course. Do any of you need any of those resources in particular, or are you lacking them?
Well, we've got to redo our website.
Okay.
And yeah, so we'll be looking for people to do that. But in terms of Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, all of that set up, mailing list is set up with MailChimp.
Okay. And do you have dedicated people that look after this stuff for you, or within your,
we have the most brilliant education officer who is the person who contacts the schools, but she also looks after all the social media, and the rest of us try and do a bit when we can. But it'll be interesting to see how that works moving forward, because we're going to be a much bigger organisation.
Okay.
Once everything's in place. So I don't know. I think it needs, personally, I think it's good to have one person who works, who knows it inside out, but I think it's good for other people to be able to access and put stuff on, just to mix it up a bit.
Okay. Yeah.
I'll
go with that. And what the other question I just throw out there as one to everyone in the group is, what's your main focus? Which one of these things at the moment would you say is your main focus? Where are you putting the time and effort that you've got available to you at the moment? In what is it? Social media, for example, is that where we're putting our time and effort, or is it community newsletters, or is it just genuinely a mixture of all of them?
For us, I'd say it's probably social media and word of mouth at the moment. We've done a bit of the other ones, but that's probably where most of our sort of interaction with other people is coming from.
Okay.
Yeah, I'd say for us, it's the newsletter is really important, because then that actually gets posted across social media.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
So that's our key tool, and all the networking we're doing at the moment, meeting lots and lots of people and telling everybody about it. So yeah, it's word of mouth.
Okay. Fantastic.
Yeah, I think for us, we created a website, but the main thing we're doing is having this little mailing list, which we then use to organise kind of volunteer days. So I suppose that's essentially word of mouth, is talking to people. One of the things in terms of resources that I've grappled with a bit is in making decisions about, like we chose in the end to set up a free website so that we don't have, it's like a WordPress, so it's got WordPress in the domain name, for example.
Yeah.
And to set up a free oakbrookorchard@gmail address.
Yeah.
Or we could have spent some money and got a website that just is www.oakbrookorchard and had an email address connected to it. And I guess there are similar issues with any kind of thing you approach like that. Is, should I pay someone to do this job for me, or shall I take the more expensive option, or shall I do the kind of cheaper, slightly fudge it together kind of option? And for us, it felt like it made sense at this stage to do the cheap version, but I guess at some point you want to look a little bit more professional, maybe.
Yeah, I completely get that. For me personally, and this is just my personal opinion, and I don't know much about your farm and where you are at the moment, other than what we've talked about today. I think you've gone the right way. I don't think when you're a small business and a lot of what you're building at the beginning is like we've discussed, word of mouth and trust, and the product delivers. When you start pushing that fruit out there and delivering that quality service, that's what's going to attract or push away potential members, or you lose members. I don't think at this stage, when it comes from a marketing angle, that people knowing you've taken the free option because you've got the word WordPress in your website is going to be a negative, especially with the nature of what we're all trying to create here, which is a local community, CSA service. We're not trying to be the next Riverford. We're not trying to be the next, Avon Cole. We're trying to do things better and more locally. So again, just a personal opinion and my personal experience, I think you've made the right decisions. It's something you can afford to spend the 200, 300, 400 maybe down the line when you want to neaten things up and, like you said, come across more professional, and perhaps when you're having to employ people in the future, or you want to give them that sense of working for a proud organisation. But in the first instance, I think you've made the right decision. If it wasn't, it's a little bit ironic because me personally, I'm a second year CSA, first on a new farm, and I've paid for those upgrades and stuff. But there's different angles to my website. I do a lot of seminar stuff and talks and bits like that. So it's more than just the CSA website. But if I was in your position and just starting a CSA, and in the early stages, I don't think there's an issue with that. And
I would entirely concur with that, because I think it's more important to get something up and running and to have a presence, an online presence, and that's what you've got. And it's also important to have a landing spot, and that's what this basic website is giving people. It's a landing spot for them to come and double check what they've heard about and where they can find out a bit more. And I think the fact that you're doing it is the most important thing. And then in time to come, you can sharpen that up. I think that's a very, very fair point.
What's more important? What's more important when it comes to the website itself is that the information on it's up to date, there's quality there for people to refer to. It's not just a website that we've put together in the first week of CSA and then left it for 6 months without any updates. I think the name of what it's called, or the email address is a Gmail email address, is irrelevant if the quality that they're receiving once they've logged onto that website is right. And that again links back to consistency and quality of product, not physically just the product you're pulling out the field, but that whole experience. So I think it's a really, really good point when it comes to resources, because let's not beat around the bush. These things can be expensive to set up, and where you need to make cutbacks, I think, or not splash out the cash, I think you've made the right decision.
Well,
go on, sorry.
No, I was just going to say, and keep it simple, because it's a landing spot, because so much of the other information comes in other ways these days, through social media and so on. I was going to make one other point, and that is that at Camel CSA, we no longer have flyers. For years, we had flyers, A5 sized flyers that we made available to people if they wanted to know more about us. And of course, that's not necessary. We don't feel that's necessary anymore, given that the way social media has gone. But some of you might still be using flyers and putting posters up. It's not something we do. But we did for years.
I think
it was expensive too. That was the other problem. Print costs.
Yeah, you're actually. I think it's a dying art, which is probably a good thing. I think it's completely your own opinion, but also it's expensive. It's expensive when you can effectively, through social media, do something very similar for free.
Right. Well, we will be talking in more detail about social media later. What I'm going to suggest now is a 5-minute break. So you can either go and get a glass of water, go to the loo, or just poke your head outside to see if it's still nice and sunny, which it is. So it's now 11:49. So if everyone's back at 11:55, that would be great. And we'll look forward to seeing you then.
Cool.
We'll keep it all up and running, of course.
Okay.
Happy so far, Charlotte?
Sorry?
Happy so far?
Are you happy? Yeah. I've hardly spoken with anyone over the last week. So
yeah, I think that's coming across in my waffling a little bit. I will try and cut it back a little bit. But,
no. I'm just saying that I haven't had any conversations for a week.
Yeah.
And I'm finding it, from my perspective, I'm thinking, yeah, it's weird if you live alone and end up in isolation, or lockdown.
Yeah, my sister, got a sister that lives in Manchester. We were chatting about exactly that. She lives on her own now. She's in sort of like her mid-40s, lives on her own, and she's a really, really sociable person as well. Out of all of my sisters, she's no doubt the most sociable of us all. And she just lives on her own. So the couple of times she's had to go through it over the last 18 months, I know she's really, really struggled. A hell of a lot of FaceTime in between the two of us and the rest of the family. I think it's how she's got through it.
It's weird if you're used to being on your own. Lockdown has been okay. It's the coming out. The problem. You've kind of forgotten how to have a conversation and how to engage. So yes, it's strange, but Friday is picking and packing day, and I'll be up there.
Excellent.
Probably is. I'll probably be stuck in a very hot polytunnel, just harvesting on my own. Just, one particular.
Yeah, I've got to put a new one up in the next few months, ready for next season. embarking on something that I've never done before, which is 100-foot polytunnel. I just I am dreading it. Yeah, not only from a heat aspect, but I can leave it a little bit longer. But
it's the cover is the most. I mean, we've done them all ourselves, and I'm not a techie, but the framework is pretty straightforward if you know how to do things. It's meccano in a way, but it's getting the cover on. And we have got 4 large polytunnels, and 3 of them are the kind which come down curved and then they have straight sides.
Right, okay.
Fourth one we were given, which we still had to buy the cover, and we still had to buy lots of bolts and things onto it. But anyway, but it's curved all the way down. And it was a bugger to get the cover on.
Oh, don't tell me that.
The advantage of the straight sides is you can bring them down as far as the straight bit, and then really, really pull. And so that one in a storm, if you're in it, you think, oh my God, is it going to go? Yeah, the cover going to go? And we're going to have to take some better advice next time about that type of design, I think, when we cover it. Yeah, well,
these that I'm investing in are caterpillar tunnels. They're not like polytunnels. So they're like the Richard Perkins, stuff that's popular in America. They're the caterpillar tunnels. So all the tension is from either end, because they lift like curtains at the sides, don't they?
Yeah.
And I happen to have got this spot that's south facing, but they're sheltered by 2 massive tree-lined hedges on the north and west side of the field.
Yeah.
So I think they'll work there, because they're wind protected, and that's the main thing with caterpillar tunnels. With them not being secure all the way around, they need to be, put together properly, but wind protected. But yeah, I'm not looking forward to it. I'm not looking forward to it.
Lawrence down at Seoul Farm,
he's
been using caterpillar tunnels, partly because where he started out and where he still is, although he's now got another site as well, the first site, there was going to be a problem with planning permission. The polytunnels, because he was in a walled garden. But I think he's putting up a polytunnel at his other site, which is on a farm. We didn't need planning permission, consent for our polytunnels, because we're on a bigger agricultural holding. But we still had to put in a planning, we had to give prior notification, as it's called.
Yes,
with measurements and things. And we had to pay for that. This is what annoyed me. We had to pay to give notification. And then they came back and said, yes, thank you for notifying us.
and the money. Thanks for the money as well.
But caterpillar tunnels, sometimes you don't need planning permission, do you? Or
that's
depends on the planning authority. Am I right in thinking?
Yeah, there's 2 reasons. Because I only lease it, I'm not buying it. I want them to be movable, as easily movable as possible. So, you can't predict the future, and whatever happens, I might need to take them with me. The second being exactly that. I've chatted to my landlord, who is an arable farmer, and he said the easiest way to get around it is to, declare them as caterpillar tunnels, which they absolutely are. And then I have to alert the people that we're going to use them and put them up, but they don't say no effectively. So it's you've just got to let them know you're doing it in advance. And like you said, the measurements, which he's really comfortable with. So
height, I think it's more than anything they're worried about. It's visibility.
Yeah, and that
what goes up on farms without consent.
Oh yeah, that's the other thing about my landlord. Whilst he's been in the business for 70 years, he is, I'd imagine, well, I don't imagine, I know through his daughter that he's got a couple of structures that aren't strictly, might have been informed after, as opposed to the right way of doing things. So
no, but
I just have to watch out for that kind of thing, really. But yes, anyway.
Group, you've got the kind of whiter than white, haven't you?
Yes.
Set up. Right. Alex is going to host the next session. I think people have come back. Thank you. I hope you're feeling a bit more refreshed. While Alex starts, I'm going to disappear and get myself some more water. So I'll hand over to Alex, and I'll be back in a couple of seconds.
Okay. Yeah. Welcome back. So just to set the scene, we've talked about our demographic. We understand who our demographic are by this stage. We've talked a little bit about the tools that are out there to use, what we're using so far. And now we're at the point where we're going to discuss a little bit about making it easy or enticing people to actually physically become a member and join your CSA. So, you know, there's loads of tools out there, as we've discussed, to help people realize you're there and that you exist, but actually physically getting people to hand over some of their hard-earned cash or be a member of your CSA or volunteer or whatever it is you're trying to entice them to do can be a little bit harder. So we're going to delve into that. So the simple question, we're going to have just a little break again, just scribble down a few things. What is it you're doing, and how do you entice people to join your CSA currently? Or if you're not actively taking on members at the moment, what have you done in the past, or what do you expect to do in the future? And think about some of those key messages you would use to encourage people to join. So have a think about how it is that you're enticing people to join your CSA and the key messages you're putting across that will help entice people to join your CSA. Think about that for a few minutes like we've done in the past, and we'll come back and have a little bit of a discussion. Just while you're thinking of that, I'm going to, for those of you who have in the past or are taking on active members at the moment, just have a think about some of the stumbling blocks as well that you've come across, or reasons that people perhaps haven't joined and or haven't volunteered. Okay, we'll just have one more minute and we'll have a bit of a discussion. Okay, so in the interest of mixing it up again, Jessie, do you want to go first?
Yeah, I've written down a mixture of kind of like, what do you want to tell them? You know, like there's all the, you know, fresh and local and tasty and whatever, but also somehow because for us, we're not at all at the stage of signing people up yet. And also what we're gonna be doing isn't necessarily, like, kind of feels like a weekly veg box kind of thing is relatively easy to understand.
Yes.
And but what we're going to do, we don't exactly know what that's going to look like, and it's going to be really important to be able to explain it clearly and create a system that's kind of like simple and easy to understand, so that people know what they're signing up for. And I also thought it's important to make it easy to actually do the signing up process. You know, like, is it a form online, or is it 3 pages of a form online, or do they have to notify their bank, or can you take the money out automatically for them? And those kind of like quite practical stumbling blocks potentially.
Yeah. Yeah. No, go on, carry on.
And the last thing was the kind of it sort of feels like there's the very tangible bit of it costs X pounds and you get, you know, whatever it is, X amount of fruit, but that to also make sure that people aren't forgetting the less tangible benefits of, I don't know, like they're supporting a biodiverse farm, or that they are going to be able to come to community events and that kind of stuff.
Yeah, perfect. So, I mean, without you, I mean, you could have written the notes that I've got here with that sort of explanation. So I think what you were describing there in the first instance, with, you know, when you touched on words like local, food, organic, biodiversity, all that kind of those buzzwords, those keywords, and then, like you said, helping people understand, comes under a simple key message. So, you know, that first thing you need, that first selling point, is a real simple key message that you can explain what it is that you're doing, what it is that you're asking them to sign up for. And yeah, so I think you hit the nail on the head with that, with especially with yours being quite unique. It's something that you'll have to really think about as an individual or as a team of people that are running your farm. What it is, that first key precise message, that first 2 sentences, that what it is that you're signing up for. And then the last point you made sort of links into that as well, you know, your added benefits of the membership. So again, that might be relatively easy to, once you've all sat down and, you know, had that brainstorm to explain, oh, we're going to supply you with fruit for X amount of, you know, times a year, or whatever it looks like. But, you know, those underlying community aspects of a CSA, really helping your membership understand what becoming a member of CSA really is, and, you know, helping support local businesses, helping support with the right ethos, with the right values and stuff like that. So you're absolutely right with those messages. And then another one, equally important, you know, again, it links into some of the stuff we talked about, that great relationships, that seamless product, that professionalism that we've touched on before, is exactly what you talked about is it physically easy to sign up? Is the experience of signing up and giving you some cash, or, you know, some money for an easy experience? Can I go to a website, find the information that I want, you know, double check the information that we've talked about, and then physically, whether that's via email, whether it's over the phone, whether that is through e-commerce on a website, is it physically easy for me to sign up to your farm? So yeah, some really, really great points, and I think you're definitely thinking about it on the right lines. Anyone else got? There's plenty more, so don't let me put you off by saying Jesse did a good job. Anyone else got anything different to add to that?
Pat, I think you're muted.
Pat, you're on mute. Sorry, I could just see you talking.
Yeah, sorry about that. Yeah, I had similar sorts of things, but I also had the use of trial or taster offers, sort of, so people maybe can commit to a month before they have to commit to 6 months or whatever. Certainly might entice people to sort of give it a go. And also sort of being reasonably priced, because I think if you're too expensive, you're going to put people off straight away, aren't you?
Yeah, absolutely. Another 2 from sort of the program notes. Absolutely. I think clear pricing comes sort of links into what you were saying there. Yes, it's important to get your price point right, but then also help people understand what it is they're getting for their money. So clear pricing sort of comes under that. And trial membership's a great idea. Again, just linking it to my personal situation, being brand new and being the only one of these sort of around in Essex, doing it, certainly the local Essex area that I'm in, people aren't sure what it is or what it's about. So a trial membership's fantastic. When I talk to anyone, they're expecting, you know, the same experience you'd get with Riverford, or the same experience. They think I'm just another veg box service, and it links in again to what Jessie was saying. It's more than that. It's a community. It's a membership. It's being part of something. And so a trial membership is a really great way to do that. I've done it slightly differently. That for the first few seasons, I plan on selling single boxes or boxes in small quantities, so that, you know, you get them through the door. But essentially, it's the same thing as a trial membership. So no, it's great. Anything to add, Pat?
Yeah, yesterday we visited Kai Tan, because we're going around various places to try and pick everybody's brains, just in terms of ease of signing up or paying. What they said was that standing orders are going out, and what they were going to go to was something called Go Cardless, linked to QuickBooks. We're actually going to go with Xero accounting system, we think. We're currently on Sage, and there is also another. There is an equivalent to Go Cardless, which is like a direct debiting system, linked to Xero as well. So these are basically systems which allow you to take people's bank account details and take money out of their account, and also it means that when you come to put your prices up, you can automatically do that rather than asking everyone to change their standing order.
Yeah.
So it's not something we've got personal experience of, because in our old days of running a veg box scheme, we actually invoiced everybody every month, which was a great way of keeping in touch. But my God, it was a lot of work.
Yeah, so I think I'll address it very quickly in 2 points. Number one, you're right. There's loads of e-commerce tools out there now, and there's a lot of fantastic ones out there that will enable you to do pretty much versions of everything that you've just described. So whether that's you want to invoice people monthly, but it's all done automatically, or you've got the option to make it automatic. I use SumUp as a card reader, functionality for my farmers markets, and they're another one that have now gone to enabling you through their app to do a lot more of that. You know, I use Squarespace online for my website, which is very similar to WordPress, you know, that we were talking about earlier. And again, there's e-commerce packages available that will, enable someone like me, very simple, tech-minded. I'm not a computer whiz by any stretch of the imagination, to do that fairly comfortably. What you've got to bear in mind, and we've discussed it before, is that there'll be a cost to implement.
There is.
Linked. The easier that you want it, the easier you want it to be, the more you will effectively pay. Just very final point on that, linking it into what we're talking about is making it easy. I think we all have this ideal of what we'd like it to be, which is very smooth, very easy for us at our end. You know, we don't have to spend hours and hours doing accounting, chasing up on emails and things like that. But thinking about it from the customer's point of view, they want those options. So for me, in my personal, this first big year push on this new farm, I've been a real open book. You know, if someone said to me, I don't use PayPal, I only use check, I've gone and made that happen. In the future, I hope that it'll all be automated, and and I won't have to do that. I'll streamline it and only have one or two channels. But when you're in a situation where you're trying to build up a membership and you're starting from zero, I think having those different, might be an extreme, but those different options, whether it be e-commerce, PayPal, bank transfer, that kind of thing, available for different people to use. Because the last thing you want to do from when you're at ground zero with no members it's put people off because they don't feel comfortable using PayPal, for example, if that's the route you go down. So under that caveat of making it easy, it just sort of brought up that point for me. You're absolutely right. I think streamlining it from a productivity point of view, from a business point of view, is absolutely your end goal. And, you know, having those two or three consistent methods of how to become a member, but don't limit yourself. Certainly in the early seasons would be my advice. Anything else you want to add to that, Charlotte? Just looking at the time.
I was going to say that we insist on trial membership. Everybody has to do it, even if they're convinced they want to stay with us forever and ever. So we have a month's trial membership. We're still working with standing orders, and so people set up a standing order for trial membership, which they then cancel if they don't carry on. It used to be the other way around. We just used to take a money transfer off them and then get them to set up a standing order when they continued, but that was too complicated. But the problem is, as Pat pointed out, is that when we raise our membership prices, you then have to contact everyone, and it takes a long time to get everyone to change. So, and we did actually have to get rid of someone who never changed, which was a nuisance. We have a simple online sign-up form on our website, and we simply do that using Google Forms. Highly recommend that if you're not familiar with Google Forms. Really, really useful. And we offer a choice of delivery, home delivery or delivery to a pickup point. We no longer offer collect from the site because we moved sites and our new landowner didn't want lots of cars coming up the lane on a Friday. So we offer those two choices, but you could, bear in mind that some people are willing to pay for home delivery and some people prefer to go to a pickup point where they might meet other people. And pickup points are good things to have if they're in shops or if they're in community centres or places where people meet together anyway, in terms of publicity, if you think about it.
Can I just ask a question, Charlotte? Did you lose a lot of customers by not allowing pickup at the on-site?
Well, we have pickup on site for people who are regular volunteers, but not for anybody else.
Okay, but everybody else.
Yeah.
Had to go to
just to throw out there, my whole model is pickup point. So I don't do any home deliveries whatsoever. And to add to that, I don't have people on the farm either to pick up because for exactly the same reason as Charlotte, the situation with the landlord. And whilst, yes, I've probably lost a handful of customers, perhaps because they can't get to the pickup point on said time or day, I think what I've gained through what Charlotte just briefly touched on there, free marketing and free word of mouth marketing by having, the shopkeepers, which I've paired up with as my pickup points, talk about my veg boxes day in, day out, or certainly as a bare minimum on the collection days when they're physically in the shop, has probably outweighed the amount I've lost by not doing direct door-to-door delivery. That'll be hard. That's hard for me to put numbers on right now, but in sort of like years 2 and years 3, I'll be able to put some numbers to that.
Camels CSA were easy to walk to, but not so easy to drive to anyway. And the other thing is we use delivery either to home or pickup point as part of our marketing, because we have an electric van. Our lead grower has his own electric van. He delivers all round the lanes in a 10-mile radius on a Friday afternoon. And the town deliveries are done by bicycle. We've got 2 members of the Wadebridge Coasters Cycling Club who get paid in vegetables to deliver about 30 boxes every Friday by bicycle. And that's given us the most incredible amount of publicity. And it's also given publicity for their club. And it's helped sort of make things quite cohesive in the sense that we've made lots of contacts with the hundreds of people who do belong to their club, some of whom have signed up to become members. So that all these things are very circular, remember, it's all to do with
absolutely.
And thinking, how can I use connections within the community to create other connections and to help me do other things. But I have to say that it's taken us 12 years to get to that point, you know. And I was looking the other day, there's a couple of leaflets coming out from the CSA network about case studies of CSAs, and at least 2 of them say, if only we'd known how long it would take to create a strong membership and a steady membership and to get people on board. People don't just come overnight. It does take time to, I think it's becoming easier. I think lockdowns made it easier. People's realization that local food is so important has made it easier, but it's not going to happen overnight. So we just need to bear that in mind. It's a matter of plugging on and just being very, very, just carrying on, shutting your eyes and sometimes thinking this isn't going to work. Stumbling blocks, just quickly, stumbling block we always have is people saying, do I have to have potatoes? And we say, yes. You have to have what comes in the box in your share. If you don't like it, compost it or preferably give it to someone else. And the other one is people saying, do I have to commit to a weekly? And we say, yes, because it helps keep us going. It saves waste if we can share everything out among everybody. It saves on admin. You know, there are lots of reasons for having subscription and having a regular subscription. And we say people must give a month's notice. We never used to say that, and we got so fed up with people just suddenly withdrawing. We now make it absolutely clear people have to give a month's notice unless they have some terrible domestic disaster. And obviously then we're very, very sympathetic. As I say, there's an awful lot we've learned by trial and error.
Right, can I just ask a question? What's
Yep.
the range of, what type of organisations are you using as pickup points?
Me?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm very focused. One is a school.
Yeah.
Which is the separate entity for the reasons that we discussed earlier. You know, you've got a network of people there.
Has Alex just disappeared?
I think so.
Yeah, he also uses replenish. I can't remember the word for them, but you know, when you go and get loose lentils and things, refill stores.
Okay.
A network of refill stores around him, and he's using them because they don't sell vegetables themselves. And the kind of people who go to refill stores actually fit in with all the target audience sort of list of target audience that we've already looked at earlier on. And I think that's his main source of pickup points. With us, we've got someone who, a member who's offered, and it's nice because anybody who does pick up from there has to be very careful to shut the gate because she's got a very friendly duck in the garden. So that's quite nice. You know, it makes people feel kind of included. We use one of our members who has a workshop on an industrial estate where there's loads of parking. Fabulous. He's got a unit up there. And the third one is we use a delicatessen who doesn't sell fruit or vegetables, doesn't sell any fresh produce like that apart from dairy. So and they obviously in different ways, they're all either convenient or they're ways of getting us marketed further. But I'm sure you'd come up with other ideas.
Yeah, well, schools definitely will be one of ours.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We don't use schools because actually we've not had much. We have a lot of families on board, but we found that marketing and publicising within schools hasn't always worked with us, and I think a lot of it's to do with the particular demographic in our part of Cornwall. We're very close to the coast, which is full of second homes, but once you get inland, the demographic is low wage and people on 0 hours and contracts. So we commitment from hardworking families, as Boris Johnson would call them, is not always easy to get. So we have to think of other ways of attracting them. So that's one of the reasons we don't use schools. So while Alex is trying to get back up online, it just happens is that I'm on the next bit, as it were, and we're next going to look at how you keep people on board. It's all very well enticing them in and getting them to take out membership or even trial membership, but how do we keep them on board? How do we keep them happy? Now, I'm not going to ask you to go away and make a list necessarily, but do any of you just want to call out any ideas for keeping members on board, keeping them happy, being inclusive, making them feel part of your community?
Lots of communication.
Yeah. Yes, lots of communication. That's a good one. Yep. What kind of communication?
Good question.
Someone else like to, what kind of communication?
I'd say positive.
Positive.
And I think timely. If people
Yeah.
email or phone up, don't leave it days before you get back to them.
Yeah, now that's fine if you've got an administration, but if you're a grower and it's just you or you and one other grower, that can be easier said than done. But you're absolutely right. People, especially now, expect an instant answer. We quite often get people coming through on Messenger, Facebook Messenger, and we have a quick reply that says, we'll get back to you, we're in the field, you know, we'll get back to you once we're out of the field, that kind of thing. But yes, I think timely. But what did you mean by positive? You meant simply getting back?
Yeah, and careful use of words so that you're not
Polite.
Yeah,
Because
absolutely.
people can be quite rude. That's something we've found over the years, is even our own members can be quite rude and dismissive. And we have to just swallow. Our membership secretary, we have a person in charge of membership, and she has to swallow and be very polite back, yeah, with a fixed smile on her face. But what other kind of communication or way of making people happy and feel included and part of your burgeoning community?
I'd say, I mean, events, I think, and inviting people.
Yes.
And making it, for one of the important things for us is it's your community garden. It's the community, it is everyone's garden.
So language is important.
Yeah, language.
Isn't it? Language, yeah. It's talking about you rather than we or they. Yeah, it's very much that you, which is very much a social media thing anyway.
Yeah.
You're point, not pointing the finger, but you're very much putting it into people's hands in a way. So social events, what other sorts of things? I mean, obviously volunteering opportunities have been mentioned several times while we've been on air, as it were. Anything else? What about when people come on board? What would you send them anything when they start their membership?
Maybe like a welcome letter, maybe with recipe ideas, or
Yes, I think a welcome letter of some sort. I think probably that would be some sort of email. It wouldn't have to be a separate letter with a heading, with a signature. It doesn't have to be a separate item. But yes, it's actually sending them something saying welcome, and maybe include some frequently asked questions. Yeah. Or point them to frequently asked questions that may or may not be on your website. I think that people do have frequently asked questions, and as you become more established, you will know straight away your particular target audience, your particular membership will have certain questions they ask again and again and again. And we've turned those questions into FAQs that we send out in the welcome letter, and we send it out to people who are starting a trial. We didn't used to. We used to send it out when people finished their trial and decided to become full members, and we realized that actually they really needed those frequently asked questions right at the beginning, because it's amazing what people ask. Things like, if I come to volunteer, can I bring my dog? You know, the answer is, yeah, well behaved. And then, you know, can I bring my children? And the answer is yes, provided you keep an eye on them and you're responsible. But you know, so it's amazing what you get asked. And people asking, what do I do when I go on holiday? I mean, have you got plans? What are your plans for when people go on holiday and they don't want to have the weekly share? What do you do?
Give it to your friend.
Yes, you encourage people to give it to someone else, because not only does that mean that you've got less admin to do, but it also is a marketing tool if you think about it. Yeah, because that person might then think, wow. What we do at Camel CSA is that we work out what the cost would be for 52 boxes, although we have 51 boxes because we do a big box at Christmas and have a week when we don't put boxes out. We calculate what the cost of 51 boxes would be, and we divide by 48, and we tell people that they're paying for 48 boxes in the year, which gives them the option to go away and give their box to someone else without having to feel that they are losing out in any way. It's a little bit of a, I wouldn't call it a scam, but it's a little bit of kind of playing around with the system. But it's little things like that, you know, can help. A lot of you mentioned, some of you have mentioned newsletters. We don't actually send out a newsletter. Lots of CSAs do send out newsletters, and they send them out on a regular basis. One of the reasons, maybe on a monthly basis, one of the reasons we don't do a newsletter is because so much goes into social media in terms of news. So we send out a weekly email to our members, which not everybody reads, but it has on it a list of what's likely to be coming in the boxes the next day. So it goes out on a Thursday evening and it says what's likely to be in the boxes this week, because we've got various members, especially the older ones, who like to plan ahead. And in that email, if we've got bits of sort of internal news or bits of news that have been on social media, we might put those in as well. It depends. Sometimes it's just the list. Sometimes it's a bit more as well. It really does depend. And that's when we actually tell people about things that aren't so positive. Because I think it was Pat who mentioned, you know, be positive, be timely, you know, in terms of communication. Well, if you have a disaster, you're going to have to tell people, and you will, up to a point, we'll talk about our disasters publicly on social media. But sometimes you have disasters or setbacks that are really just for internal use. I mean, we had an outbreak of potato blight the other day. We're not, you know, we're prepared to talk about it publicly, but actually we put it into the email and said, you know, luckily our lead grower, who's very, very experienced, spotted the first signs of it, and explaining what we did then. We cut all the tops off and we hope we saved the crop on our first and second earlies. But it's things like that. It's an opportunity, if you have regular communication with your members, to be honest and transparent. And I do think transparency is important. You know, if you have to stop putting out the boxes for a week because the whole team is having to self-isolate, for instance, you know, you've got to be honest about that. If the rabbits get the carrots that you promised everyone that week, you've got to say so and tell them what you may or may not be giving them instead. I think that is important. What about things that people might need to know about in terms of just, I mean, quite a lot of people who come into us don't know an awful lot about fresh produce because they've shopped a lot in supermarkets and have either bought frozen or they've bought things that have been, you know, all those beans which are topped and tailed in a little plastic tray. So what do you think would help people if you know, just help them understand and know a bit more about vegetables and preparation?
Yeah, I think storage tips, preparation tips.
Storage tips.
Yeah.
I mean, that is a really important one. And I think recipes and preparation are fairly obvious, and we all like to do that kind of thing or plan to do that kind of thing. But where I think a lot of people stumble with is storage and knowing what to do with things. And for instance, we say, try and keep your tomatoes out of the fridge. They'll taste so much better. On the other hand, if you've got, you know, something like chard, you know, get it in the fridge. Eat certain things first. Eat the most perishable first, the most precious first. if you've got a Swede kicking around at the end of the week and you forgot to put it anywhere, don't lose sleep over that, because it will have been one of the least valuable of the things in the box. So I think storage tips. And when it comes to things like plastic, we still use plastic bags because we have 2 scientists on our core management group who are not convinced by all the alternatives when it comes to plastic bags. So we still send salad leaves and things like basil out in plastic bags, but we ask people to use them then to store the loose things that come in our boxes, like the chard and the kale and so on, when they put that in the fridge, and to keep reusing them. But storage tips are good. And we don't try and reinvent the wheel. There are lots of storage tips out there on the web. There are lots of recipes out there on the web. There are lots of preparation tips there out on the web. And what we do is we tend to link to other people. We don't invent a whole new kind of casebook or handbook of how to store. We haven't got the time. And it's if you find the kind that you like and that would suit your membership, link to them. But just watch out for the American ones, because A, the terms can be very different, what they call things, and B, they have different ways of doing things in America, which might not suit your membership. It certainly wouldn't suit our membership here in very rural Cornwall. But
just to let you know, I'm back. Sorry, I've been back a few minutes.
Hooray, hooray. Well, fortunately, we'd got on to the next bit, and we're just about at the point now to get on to your next bit. Anything else that anyone else would like to say, though, just after my little spiel about storage?
No, I was just thinking that a lot of members of a CSA won't necessarily understand very much about actual farming, and so they won't necessarily fully appreciate how good the production methods are that are being used. And one of the things that I really like about Stroud CSA is, as a member, I only get a newsletter like every 6 months or something, but it often says something in it about how kind of like what they're doing and why that's so good. And I think it's easy for people to not appreciate what's so good about what they're supporting if nobody explains it to them. So there's a kind of, I suppose it's like a combination of sort of educating the members, but also allowing them to celebrate what they're supporting, because otherwise they don't even know.
Yeah, I think that's a really, really good point. And all I would say is keep it simple. Don't go into too much detail. But we're, for instance, no dig, and we like to keep reminding our members about no dig and why and the benefits and so on. So I think that's a really, really good point. But the important thing is don't be tempted to go into too much detail, because that kind of thing can be done when people come to the site. But in your newsletter or email or whatever, just keep it short. But yeah, I think that's a fantastic point. Right, okay, let's I'm looking at the clock, so let's move on to the next bit. And what we're going to do is have in terms of, sorry, I'll just go back to there. So in terms of making people feel, come on board, you've got this list of things. And one thing I would say that's very useful is an annual questionnaire. You can use Google Forms for this, yet again. Our annual questionnaire is really useful. We keep it simple, but it's really handy to find out how people feel about certain aspects of the CSA. And we do an exit survey, which not everybody chooses to fill in when people decide to leave. But as a matter of interest, over the years, the reason people leave us is nearly always what we call a lifestyle reason, which is moving house, divorcing, changing jobs, that kind of thing. And the second reason is people who can't cope with all the veg, which takes us back to the storage and the recipes and how we do things. But an exit survey can be very useful. But the annual questionnaire, I would really, really recommend. Right, we're going to move on to social media now, because Alex is something of a whiz on social media. We used it a lot at Camel CSA, but not quite in the way that Alex does. So I'm only going to kind of pitch into this, but I just wanted to say that here in front of you is some very recent figures from the end of last year, which show UK users on social media. And what you'll see is that people using social media, most of them were using Facebook. After that, it was YouTube, Instagram, well up there. Forget about LinkedIn, because that's more about people talking about what they do for a living. And significantly look at Twitter, because it's quite low down there, but Snapchat is very much on the move. Now, this only tells us that at the moment, so many people are using Facebook, but of course, different types of people use different types of social media. And that's what Alex is going to come on to in a minute. And it depends yet again, guess what, on your target audience. But something that's terribly important to remember is that 9 out of 10 people in this country now use a smartphone. So whatever you're doing on social media, mostly people will be seeing it on a smartphone. I would have said in the past a mobile device, but very few people use tablets now compared to smartphones. And so it's very important, therefore, to take lots of images and ideally to take some short videos and to keep your words to the minimum, because that's what's easier to use on a smartphone. So Alex is now going to chat with you a bit about what works and when.
Yes, so social media is first I should say I'm not a whiz on social media. I've done a lot of studying. I've done a lot of study on it over the last sort of 5-10 years, and it's been linked to my jobs and stuff. So I'm confident I can use it to my benefit, I suppose is the way that I describe it. You're absolutely right in what Charlotte said so far. So some of the key messages that have come out this whole webinar is demographic. And with social media as the umbrella term being such a beast, that is where you decide it helps you decide what elements of social media you're going to use, what elements you're going to focus on, and what's the best tools for you. All comes down to that demographic, so everything that Charlotte said. Now, my personal social media story has been a little bit different and will be different to most, because I developed a social media following before I decided to create and start a CSA. So my social media following is quite nationalized as opposed to localized, which it makes things a little bit different. But we're going to talk, and mainly I'm going to throw it open. I'll do a little bit of what I've done and how I've used it for the CSA, and then throw it open to more questions and answers, really, and where your stumbling blocks are and bits like that around social media. So social media linked to demographic. Charlotte's absolutely right. I would say your number one, this is just my personal experience and personal opinion, the number one most beneficial tool you should use for social media is Facebook. And that is because there is again, Facebook is a tool that's got tools within it, if that makes sense. What I mean by that is Facebook is not only somewhere where people can go and see images and information about your CSA if you've set up a Facebook specific page for it, which if you haven't, I'd strongly recommend, but you can then become part of other local communities within that platform. So the number one, if you're talking about membership sign up, the number one or volunteer sign up, the number one platform that's been the most profitable, as in numbers of people joining for me, has been Facebook. And that has been down to, and I can share stats with anyone that wants them to back up some of this from my personal experience, that is down to the local community groups that are within Facebook. So Facebook, like I said, is great. It's a very interactive platform, very similar to a website. You can have that page with information about your CSA. But what I use it for, and what we use it for at my CSA, is to go into other community areas and networks, especially in a COVID world where there's not so much face-to-face, and become active members and parts of those communities within it. So whether that is Chelmsford local community group, because that's my local, big city, well, it's a city now, but very small city, big town, whether that's Roxwell, which is the village I'm in, some of the surrounding villages, just their general networks of people and community groups. Then I've extended that, and we've touched on this before, into interest groups, localized interest groups, which is stuff like Essex is green or Chelmsford is green, because naturally you'll have a large proportion of your demo, or certainly my demographic, within those groups. I've even ventured into farming groups and regenerative agriculture groups, or in Charlotte's instance, it might be no-dig groups on a wider but localized allotment and no-dig groups that are people that are interested in growing fruit and veg and stuff like that. So I'd encourage you to think of Facebook as more than just a page, you know, the Essex Allotment Farm page. Yes, it's absolutely there. I don't necessarily do too much with that on Facebook, but I use it as a tool to get into other local community groups. And without a shadow of a doubt, that is the biggest social network contributor to sign-ups or volunteering on my first year farm.
And I would endorse that. And I would endorse that for us for years now. That's been the case. Yeah.
And yeah, and just to put some numbers in to back that up. So my following of my actual page on Facebook is probably less than 1,000. So with it being quite local and quite it's hard to grow. It's difficult. You know, it's a lost in that huge world that is Facebook. My following and on Instagram and YouTube, which are two other platforms that I'll touch on in a minute, and use regularly, is significantly larger. But the conversion rate of people to actually becoming members or at least volunteers on the farm is much higher in Facebook and things. So whilst some people have the opinion that Facebook is a dying platform, you know, it's been around for a long time. Instagram has been more popular over the last few years. You've got Snapchat and TikTok and all these things that are coming behind it, YouTube, that would be considered on the up, as opposed to Facebook in its widest sense of the word is on the down when it comes to social media, and they're losing shares to other platforms. It is, without a shadow of a doubt, the number one platform that I use to convert to memberships and sign-ups. So I can't overemphasize that point. It might feel like a hard slog at times because it takes perhaps a little bit more effort to go into all these networks and groups, but it's almost replaced in a COVID world that face-to-face interaction that's been limited over the last few years. So in my spiel before I'll just touch on a couple of the other key ones that I've used. Instagram, I've got a huge following on Instagram, and whilst it's great to give people snapshots of what's going on the farm, what's happening, you know, following my story as, you know, starting, you know, part of what I do is I tell the story of starting from an empty field to where I'm at now and where I want to be in the future. And what I would say is Instagram and YouTube are fantastic, and both something that I both do and can and will, you know, help with that storytelling when it comes to converting people to membership or to volunteering or whatever it is that you want to get out of starting this CSA. They have very low impact on that level. They're very nationalized. You know, there's not too many ways to limit it to local people, or really, you know, push for local people. They're two very national, worldwide platforms. So what you'll naturally get on those platforms is a group of people a lot further afield. And as we well know, outside of 10 to 50 miles, you're not going to be selling to those people at this stage. So it's great. And when you do, there's loads of other things that you can use those platforms for. But when you're in the first sort of, 1 to 5 years of a CSA, a new CSA, I would suggest that they're great for helping tell the story and keep people engaged in your story, but not necessarily for a place to build up memberships and volunteers. There are others out there that I don't use too much. Like, say, LinkedIn is great. Not touch on it any more than it's great to link up with other business, agricultural, in the agricultural world when you get to that scale. TikTok and Snapchat, again, not necessarily something that I've done too much work with, but again, are great for other tools for you to tell your story to share your story. But I can't emphasize enough that if what you're looking to get out of the marketing and is invest, is capital on your investment, that sounds very formal, but you're going to put some time into social media, and what you want to get out of it is something tangible, whether that's volunteer hours from people or people becoming members. Then Facebook and Facebook localized groups within Facebook would be the way I'd encourage you to go from the start. So yeah, that's with everything, like everything that we've touched on before. Consistency is key when it comes to all social media. We're giving a great product is key. So what Charlotte discussed at the beginning about being having something that's easily accessible from smartphones on a small screen, all that kind of thing. And if you're going to go down the social media route, don't just set it up and then not use it for 6 months. With your newsletters or your leafleting or your word of mouth, whichever avenue you decide to go down, it's exactly the same. Consistency is the key, and using it little and often is the way that I've used it to effect so far. But like everything, this comes with a caveat. It's a changing world, like we've seen from those numbers that Charlotte pulled up. There are new social media platforms that are appearing every day, and from a month by month, week by week basis, those different ones will become more popular and less popular. What I will emphasize again is that Facebook seems to be the one that's standing the test of time, and certainly linked into a CSA network, because you can localize it, because you can drill down and really get to that local level. It's a really, really key tool.
I was going to just say that Facebook's interesting because the membership of Facebook's getting older all the time. And
yes,
for instance, I have daughters in their 20s, and they think of it as a kind of granny thing. However, they look at the community pages and groups, and that's become very obvious during lockdown in this area of Cornwall, that lots of young people who wouldn't use Facebook to communicate with other young people are actually looking at what's in the groups. And we've had quite a lot of younger people getting in touch that way, and very often it's been to help out with things, when we put out a call for cardboard, or put out a call for wood chip, or put out a call for volunteers. That's how we've got them. So I think Facebook is interesting, and one shouldn't dismiss it just because it's only seen to be a place where people over 50 or whatever
and
share
look,
their holiday snaps.
Exactly that. I can only talk about my personal situation. You absolutely hit the nail on the head again, in the sense that yes, Facebook's membership is aging, but I haven't got a member of mine. I've got a 65 a week membership, and I don't think, off the top of my head, without sharing personal information, I don't think I've got anyone under the age of 35 as a member. So again, risking to sound like a broken record, look at your demographic. The demographic of Essex, it's London Overspill, it's affluence, it's people with, my target audience is the Facebook target audience. It really is. And whilst that might be different for other people, absolutely, some of the things we've discussed is I don't want to just have the CSA here for those people you pigeonhole being CSA memberships. I'm in year one on this huge, on this upscale, and so I need to focus on that core group, and my core group is the higher end of the age demographic, which fits in with what Charlotte just said about the people that are using Facebook still. So it's a really, really good point. So let's throw it open. Social media, so just looking at time, let's throw it open, start with social media. Any questions? What are you using so far? Anything that you want me to help with, or stuff that you don't agree with? And let's throw it open. Well, there might not be anything. I think you're on mute, Pat, if you're trying to go on.
Yeah,
yep.
I'm just unmuted. Yeah, I mean, we use Facebook a lot, and we link it to our Twitter. So everything that goes on our Facebook automatically goes on to Twitter.
Yeah.
And we also use Instagram a lot. But is Instagram younger folk, or is it?
I think so one thing I forgot to touch on was Twitter. So just to do that point first. The only thing that I find Twitter useful for is networking. And when I say networking, I mean networking with local schools, local politicians, local newspapers, journalists, whatever it is like that. I think that fits under the sort of YouTube and Instagram thing, that it's a nice to do, but if there was one I could afford to get rid of, you know, if I needed to get rid of a platform because it doesn't really service anything for me, it would be Instagram, because sorry, no, that's not the truth. It's Twitter, because it doesn't serve necessarily the purpose. It's certainly never converted anything membership wise for me, and it's quite limited.
Yeah, it is limiting, and I would endorse that. It's useful for getting in touch with local politicians actually as well, but we used Twitter at the very beginning because there were no Facebook groups, there were no Facebook pages, and Instagram was already, you know, wasn't even an idea. So we keep a Twitter account, and I simply put up what's in the boxes every week, and then I like and I share and I retweet various things. But one thing I never do personally is automatically share from Instagram or Facebook to Twitter, or automatically to each other. I put up similar posts. I change the language in each one. I might even change the image, because I'm thinking about the different audience each time, and it's worth bearing in mind if you're into that kind of thing.
Again, and again, it's what output you want from the input. So it's absolutely right. You're absolutely right that, as we've just discussed, the audience on Facebook is very different to the audience on, say, Instagram. So yeah, if you want, you're absolutely right. It's like you would talk to you maybe talk to a 25-year-old different how you talk to a 65-year-old. So it's the same. From the other points that you got from the question, Instagram is just a bit of everything. What you find from Instagram is it's because it's just visual. It's pretty much just visual. 9 out of 10 people don't read the captions on Instagram. They only flick through the pictures. It's very instant. It's very visual. So you, from a membership of Instagram, you get a bit of everything. But it's sort of like that middle category would be where your bulk is. So your 20 to 40-year-olds are the bulk of people that are using Instagram. But you do get a bit of everything on there. Again, there's national stats from all different businesses, not just CSAs, not just retail, but from all businesses that say Instagram is a fantastic tool. It's fast growing, it's fast paced, it's easy, because it's effectively just a snapshot and it's instantaneous, hence the name. What you actually get from Instagram back is very little, and that's through all types of businesses and individuals that use it. So if you're looking at it from the marketing and business angle, it's great, like I said, to tell your story and to share and to help with that community feel, because people will follow those snapshots, but you're not necessarily going to get too much back your way out of it. So yeah, that would be any other questions or comments?
Has anybody any experience of Snapchat?
Yeah, I've used it for personal, but it doesn't fit. It doesn't fit the bill. It doesn't fit. I wouldn't go down that route. I think TikTok. If you are going down that route, Snapchat's dying and TikTok's replacing it. There's a very like 2021 sort of thing, but again, it's just another version of Instagram. It's just another variation of Instagram. And TikTok and Snapchat, the demographic on that would be very young. The membership of those two platforms would be extremely young. You're talking teenagers to young adults. Outside of that, they don't really use that. There's not too many people that use that platform. And
are they the kind of people who'll join your CSA?
Exactly. The one thing I haven't touched, just as a final point, is YouTube. YouTube is a hell of a lot of effort, but you will get stuff back out of it. the one way in CSA, because my YouTube is slightly different. I follow, people can follow my whole journey on YouTube. You know, I literally vlog about the CSA and my input into the CSA and how I'm trying to create this CSA, which is a lot of work and isn't for everyone. And there's a different angle to it for the reason that I'm doing it. But what I have seen used is it's a more interactive use. So they do a newsletter on YouTube. So instead of having a newsletter that says, this is what's in your box this week, or an email that says, this is what's in your box this week or this month, this is how the farm's going, you know, that standardized newsletter. I've seen a couple of CSAs start to creep into YouTube where they stand in front of the camera on the farm and sort of show what is going on in a very quick 5-minute video, that then his or her membership then can log on to that and see it in a more visual way. Again, I think that's been pushed by COVID because it's been harder over the last 18 months for people to physically visit the farm. But it is a tool that I've seen people use.
Right, I'm very aware of the time.
Yes.
It's just coming up to 1 o'clock and you're probably feeling hot, thirsty and hungry. So I just wanted to say thank you, everybody. Thank you very much for taking part. And this has been recorded, so you can come back to it anything you want. If you do want any if you have any particular questions, you're certainly very welcome to get in touch with